This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, I asked Joey about sci-fi today.
Woo! Melakalikimaka is what Joey sounds like.
That's nice.
And this is what an executive producer who will be home for Christmas, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess. I will not be home for Christmas.
I won't be home for Christmas.
Unless home is where the heart is, in which case, then there you go.
Are you doing Christmas in Connecticut? You're not from Connecticut. It's a movie. It's an old movie that, unless you
That could
have
easily
a
be like a new Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah. Who was it?
Yeah.
I think it was Katharine Hepburn. Christmas in Connecticut. It was 1945. Barbara Stanwyck, Dennis Morgan.
Whoa.
It was, classic
Babs.
Barbara Stanwyck, Dennis Morgan
Typical.
device. Yeah.
Classic Barbara Stanwyck mess around.
Yeah. A Barbara Dennis mess around. We're recording this, which I realize I think is, like a good practice for future. We're recording this on December the 6th. Jessica, I have a question for you that was kind of your question, but you asked me to deliver it based on...
Oh, wait, I can do it. I just need your answer to it. That's actually makes more sense that I'm asking.
Okay.
Because, as we know, Joey, you are the sci-fi expert, and I am a sci-fi... What's it called when you live under...
Philistine?
A rock? Yes, perfect. That's me. I got scrolled into an old Microsoft ad the other day, which I think made its rounds maybe like a decade ago in various articles, because it was revisiting this ad that Microsoft had put out in the 90s that was envisioning a smart home, of what that would be like. And it's hilarious. You should watch it. We'll put it in the show notes. There's like a desktop computer in every room, which just goes to show you, unfortunately, how woefully incorrect they were about the smartphone phenomenon. But it's just like all the different features of the house. And there's one thing that many commenters get particularly upset about where that doesn't exist today, because there is a garbage bin that keeps track of all the things you throw away and adds it to your grocery list so that you know what you need to replenish, yada, yada, yada. And the general consensus back when people were writing these articles about like reflecting on this video 10 years ago was, wow, like a lot of these things actually happened. Some didn't happen exactly as we thought they would, but a lot of them actually happened. And it just got me thinking that maybe you might have a peek into our actual future because you watch sci-fi things and read sci-fi things. And if this was just as true about what the smart home could look like, what kernels of truth are there in sci-fi content today that can maybe predict what our smart technological futures will look like?
I mean, I love this. Whether or not I have the answers is maybe a different question. At some point early on in the company, I think it was like when IoT was like a relatively new concept, Internet of Things, and all of the devices were being connected, and we made this website like as like a new business type of thing where we're just like the smart home of the future, like sort of aggregating all of these things, looking at sort of futurist timelines and when people were predicting. I might be able to pull up one thing while we're on in the conversation, but it was really fascinating to look at retrofuturism. This idea of like what did the home of the future look, you're bringing up the 90s, like what did it look like? There was a lot of this that happened around sort of key moments, like the World Fair at the turn of the century. There was like a lot of this like futuristic orientation. We were like well into the sort of like second industrial revolution, and things like the elevator, like the Otis elevator, were being like demonstrated in these places. It was almost like a CES type of moment, but felt like more science-y than like salesy, in the way that some of like the big conferences of like displaying technology are now. And maybe that's wrong. I'm sure Otis wanted people to buy his elevator. That's why he did like crazy demonstrations of the braking system, so people knew it was not going to like plunge to their death.
Yep.
but there, in Buckminster Fuller and even Walt Disney were thinking a ton about like, what does the future of communities look like, the future of a home. Buckminster Fuller had like everything with him was Dymaxian, the Dymaxian map, the Dymaxian neighborhood.
What does that mean?
He had a definition for it. Dymaxian. It is a term coined by architect and inventor Buckminster Fuller and associated with much of his work. Prominently his Dymaxian house, Dymaxian car. Dymaxian is a portmanteau of the words dynamic, maximum, and tension. Sums up the goal of his study: maximum gain of advantage from minimal energy input. So like the Dymaxian map is like cut into triangles and is like the least distortion on a flat surface of a globe. So like that,
Whoa.
It as compared to like the Mercator projection where Greenland is insane. But in their neighborhood, like Disney and Fuller were doing these like trying to like map out how you could organize a community to like maximize like walkability and like actual sense of sort of emotional community and things like that. But there were always these or the Jetsons, right? Like flying cars, robotic housekeepers, and like all of those things. But I feel like at some point the level of optimism towards the future shifted. And even in things like, we talk about the metaverse now, the metaverse sort of, it is like attributed in name and more clarity of concept to Neil Stephenson in the book Snow Crash, but was also in William Gibson's book Technomancer. And those ideas were like, here is this, place where you like either like jack into or like put on goggles or other things and like are in like a very separate world and disconnected. But in like both of those societies, it was like, big evil corporations like controlling the world. Like in Snow Crash, it is like there aren't really like governments anymore as there are franchises. So like, do you live on like McDonald's property or like Starbucks property or like Exxon Mobil? Yeah.
Oh, that's less imagination than well, maybe it's imagination, but it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's real. Are you telling me that this is what we have to look forward to?
No, I mean, I think some of these things are like the cautionary tale that comes from the sci-fi, like at the same time, like that Buckminster Fuller and Disney were thinking about these things, like Epcot Center was happening. There was also like Philip K. Dick was writing more of that, like cautionary, like iRobot and the Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, right? That was not necessarily like the shiny picture of like what to, Fahrenheit 451, like what to consider if this new technology goes too far in a direction you don't want. And so I think in a lot of things that you're seeing in popular sci-fi won't pretend to like have like a complete pulse on all of the good quality sci-fi literature coming out. But, you know, something like Ready Player One was really popular in the early mid-teens and then got turned into a movie. And that sort of was like a continued progression of the metaverse ideas of Stevenson. And it was about like, you know, cautioning of going too far. If you spend all of your life, like what happens, like what are the potential implications of that? But there are other things, a lot of things now around AI and how can that go too far, and what is that like, and
Right.
you know, what does a post-scarcity society look like? Ian M. Banks' Culture series, which we've talked about before for like other reasons, just like the names of the ships are cool and stuff like that.
What are the names of the ships? Do you remember any?
They're hold on.
Quick, name some ships. They don't follow the standard tropes of naming it after your mother or naming it after some ambitious virtue.
Yeah, they're really fun names. Hold on, I'm like getting down to it.
Smaller boats can be named jokes or puns.
They're like, I mean, these are like spacecraft, like giant, like
big space boat.
Basically like a city in space size of big space boat. But they have names like So Much for Subtlety, Unfortunate Conflict of Evidence, Just Read the Instructions. This
falls into pun category.
Yeah, Of Course I Still Love You. Gunboat Diplomat. You know, and some are just like Screw Loose or Kiss My Ass or things like that. Credibility Problem.
Standard.
Yeah. Excuses and Accusations. Funny, it worked last time.
There's
they're just like so good, and in the context of the personalities of the ships and stuff like that, the way they like they're just like perfectly played. Just another victim of the ambient morality. Like, you know, like I don't know how you come up with these, like the precise nature of the catastrophe. Ultimate Ship the Second. Like they're just so.
The precise nature of the catastrophe is a perfect. that one really uniquely gets the boat naming convention spot on.
Yeah, you would if you really loved me. Like they're just like some of them are just like phrases that you recognize, but as the name of a ship is just like great. But like the Culture series was interesting in that it is like a far future series and brings together implications of a lot of different technologies and introduces a lot of, like, to the best of my knowledge, the neural lace. Like, so Elon Musk has a company now called Neuralink, which is like working on their eventual concept is what in the Culture series they called the neural lace, which is basically like a hairnet that goes over your brain. Is that like that's the easiest way to like think about the concept and allows you
inside or outside?
In like inside the cranium, outside of the cortex, in between where the dura sits. For those familiar with brain anatomy, yeah, like between the bony bit and the fleshy bit.
That's what I'm looking for. Bingo.
Yeah. But that idea of the neural lace is introduced in that book series, and then Elon Musk, who is known to like the series, and there was like a pissing contest between Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk because at some point they were both trying to like name their rockets off of the Culture naming convention, the ship naming convention. But he started that company, and like that is sort of like an informed perspective of integration and like the in quotes the singularity, where the line blurring between technology and the human body is like pushed down, or is like blurrier and blurrier and blurrier. But they have other things, like in the Culture series, all of those ships are like run by an independent AI. And it's effectively like post-scarcity. Like one of the books called The Player of Games is basically about like existential crisis in a post-scarcity society where like you don't have to work. You don't really have to do anything. And this person becomes like a foremost expert on games. Like he's in academia, but he's just like bored. He's like 130 and is like, I'm the best at these games. Like, what do I do? And gets into this, like they discover a society that is the politics and the governance of the society is based on like, instead of an election happening every so often, there's this like very elaborate, like lethal game that is played.
Classic.
And
that is always the way.
Yeah.
What if instead we just let everybody just maim each other to resolve? Isn't that the plot of like many books and films? Like
Squid
what's that
Game.
scary one?
Yeah,
or like the one. What's
Hunger
the one
Games?
where? No, yes, that, and also the one where it's like the Purge. Right?
Oh.
It's like this will resolve all kinds of real political conflict.
Just vent your rage once a year.
Wow.
But so like that's an example of sort of another one that is more recent than those books that also won like the Hugo or the Nebula in sci-fi. It's called the Neanderthal Parallax. It was like a 3-book series, but like one of the key like technological conceits of this, it's basically like 2 dimensions parted. In like one timeline, humans became the dominant species, and the other, Neanderthals became the dominant species. They're doing a quantum computing experiment on the Neanderthal side and open up a portal between those 2 like multiverse moments, and that you get to like explore like how could a society maybe have been different had like you advance what we know from like Neanderthal archaeology. And so, but that is like similarly about integration. The Neanderthals have like a companion that is like powered by their body, and is like a personal like AI thing. And so that's similar integration. And the Boboverse, which has been popular recently, is sort of exploring like what does like a personality, if you're uploaded, become, like what is like a human personality in like infinite digital space act and behave like.
Wow. This is, what's funny is when I thought of this question and when I saw this old Microsoft ad, I admit my first thought about it was more like, oh, I wonder what the technologies themselves are going to be. But talking to you about it, it's so clear to me that you can't imagine those technologies without also imagining the societies around them and how we interact with it differently, interact with each other differently, the things that motivate us. Like, oh, I'm just so bored now because AI took over everything, is so interesting, and not exactly what I anticipated. I wish we had more time to keep going because this is bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I will give you one recommendation as a closing for a show.
Great.
Humans. It was like a Channel 4 British show that was about sort of like sentience happening within these like companion robots that would like take care of people in their homes and stuff. But like the conflict between humans and sentient AI in a sort of embodied form. Good show, fun in the scary way, about recognizing sentience and alien intelligence and how do we act about that, important questions.
Wow. and our whole perspective on sentience even changing as we learn more about things that are non-human but alive in other ways.
Yeah.
Like birds. Obviously, birds. Anyway,
Birds.
for another time.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm just like thinking of like the Children of Time series. Like, yeah. Anyways, did you already kind of do the wrap up corner?
Oh, did I do it? Whoops. The idea that all of the sci-fi imaginations, for good, for bad, for all their possible butterfly effects, everyone is seemingly imagining them, and Joey has all the best recommendations. So write to us for all of the books for Joey's sci-fi book list that now I'm signing you up to write.
Okay, great. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by the space between the bony part and the fleshy part.
As always, we'd like to thank executive producer and the Dura to this podcast, Jess Vander.
Thanks. Also, I'm sorry I said what I said. Also, thank you to our sound engineer and the Neuralink, Alex Contel. Sorry, do you want to be associated with that? I'll take it back. The neural lace. You nailed it.
We would also like to thank our programming coordinator and the precise nature of the catastrophe, Les Jacobs.
Wow. And thank you to our production crew and Big Space Boat crew. Sarah Gilbert, Norm Vesterich, Christy Jensen, and Amy Waters.
And as always, thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
Special thanks to Ian M. Banks for these ship names. I just like scroll
Honestly,
down and I'm just like, synchronize your dogmas.
Game over.
Synchronize your dogmas.
Oh man, that's a good one.
Yeah, I don't know. Ethics gradient.
Boats.
Wisdom
There's
like
so
silence.
many boats in this universe.
There are like 9 or 10 books. Like,
wow.
and depending on how prominently because they are sentient, then like how prominent, like some of them only have a few in the books and some have more, like how prominent they are. Attitude adjuster. Like frank exchange of views. Just passing through.
Friendly dialogue. We could just do that. We could have a whole show just coming up with other Ian M. Banks boat missed names.
Yeah, like
man.
I don't know. These are like they just make me happy. Anyways, thanks Ian M. Banks. He's no longer with us, but
thanks.
I am still
Wow.
appreciative of his contribution to
Me too.
my delight.
This is great. Thank you for sharing your brain.
Thank
More
you for
next time.
being like, hey, talk about nerdy things that you like.
He's
and
like,
I'm
what?
Oh my God, okay.
Well, because you asked.
Well, I forgot to discuss the Children of Time series, which later goes into sort of discussions of bicameralism and Corvid intelligence. Like, so stupid. Well, love you,
This
mean
is
it.
fun.
Bye.
Okay, bye.